Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतश्री श्रीमद ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतश्री श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर श्री प्रभुपाद की। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की। नामचर श्री हरदास ठाकुर की। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्तवृंद की। All glory to Assembly Warriors, Hare Krishna. All glory to Assembly Warriors, Hare Krishna. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale. Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Namo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from chapter 5, canto 2, text number 24. So Hankara iti prokto vikurvan samabhu tridha vaikarikas tejashas cha tamasas cheti yadbhida dravya shakti kriya shakti jnana shakti iti prabho so hankara iti prokto vikurvan samabhutridha vaikarikas tejasascha tamasascheti yadvidha dravya shakti kriya shakti jnana shakti riti prabho so hankara iti prokto vikurvan samabhutridha vaikarikas tejasascha Tamasascheti yadvidam Dravya Shakti Kriya Shakti Jnana Shakti Riti Prabho Vikur sorry Sohankar iti prokto Vikurvan samabhutridha Vaikarikas tejasascha Tamasascheti yadvida Dravya Shakti Kriya Shakti Jnana Shakti Riti Prabho. Please repeat. Mataji's. Shankar. Shakti Prabhu. Sohankara iti prokto. Tam Shakti Yadvidha Dravya Shakti Shakti iti prokto. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So, Saha, the very same thing. Ahankaraha, ego. Iti, thus. Proktaha, said. Vikurvan, being transformed. Samabhut, being manifested. Tridha, in three features. Vaikarikaha, in the mode of goodness. Tejasaha, in the mode of passion. Cha, and Tamasaha, in the mode of ignorance. Cha, also. Iti, thus. Yat, what is. Bhida, divided. Dravya Shaktihi, powers that evolve matter. Kriya Shaktihi, initiation that creates. Jnana Shaktihi, intelligence that guides. Iti, thus, Prabhu, O Master. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai. Sorry. Okay. Translation: the self-centered materialistic ego, thus being transformed into three features, becomes known as the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance in three divisions, namely the powers that evolve matter, knowledge of material creations, and the intelligence that guides such materialistic activities. Narada, you are quite competent to understand this. Purport: materialistic ego, or the sense of identification with matter, is grossly self-centered, devoid of clear knowledge of the existence of God. And this self-centered egoism of the materialistic living entity is a cause of their being conditioned by the other paraphernalia and continuing their bondage of material existence. In the Bhagavad Gita, this self-centered egoism is very nicely explained in the 7th chapter, verse 24 through 27. The self-centered impersonalist, without a clear conception of the personality of God, it concludes in his own way that the personality of God takes its material shape from his original impersonal spiritual existence for a particular mission. And this misleading conception of the Supreme Lord by the self-centered impersonalist continues, even though he is seen to be very interested in the Vedic literatures, such as the Brahma Sutras and other highly intellectual sources of knowledge. The ignorance of the personal feature of the Lord is due simply to ignorance of mixture of different modes. The impersonalist thus cannot conceive of the Lord's eternal spiritual form of eternal knowledge, bliss, and existence. The reason is that the Lord reserves the right of not exposing himself to the non-devotee, who even after a thorough study of literatures like the Bhagavad Gita, remains an impersonalist simply by obstinacy. This obstinacy is due to the action of Yoga Maya, a personal energy of the Lord that acts like an aide camp. Is that how I say that? Aide camp? Aide camp, by covering the vision of the obstinate impersonalist. Such a bewildered human being is described as mudha, or grossly ignorant, because he is unable to understand the transcendental form of the Lord as being unborn and unchangeable. If the Lord takes a form or material shape from his original impersonal feature, then it means that he is born and changeable from personal to impersonal to personal. But he is not changeable, nor does he ever take a new birth like a conditioned soul. The conditioned soul may take a form birth after birth due to his conditioned existence in matter. But the self-centered impersonalists, by their gross ignorance, accept the Lord as one of them because of self-centered egoism, even after so-called advancement of knowledge in the Vedanta. The Lord, being situated in the heart of every individual living entity, knows very well the tendencies of the such conditioned souls in terms of past, present, and future. But the bewildered conditioned soul hardly can know him in his eternal form. By the will of the Lord, therefore, the impersonalist, even after knowing the Brahman and Paramatma feature of the Lord, remains ignorant of his... Oh, I just lost it, sorry. Remains ignorant of his eternal personal feature as ever-existing Narayana, transcendental to all material creation. The cause of such gross ignorance is constant engagement by the materialistic man in the matter of artificially increasing material demands. To realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to purify the materialistic senses by devotional service. The mode of goodness, or the Brahminical culture recommended in the Vedic literatures, is helpful to such spiritual realization, and thus the Jnana Shakti stage of conditioned soul is comparatively better than the other two stages, namely Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti. The whole material civilization is manifested by a huge accumulation of materials, or in other words, raw materials for industrial purposes, and the industrial enterprises, Kriya Shakti, are all due to gross ignorance of spiritual life. In order to rectify this great anomaly of materialistic civilization based on the principles of Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti, one has to adopt the process of devotional service of the Lord by adoption of the the principles of karma yoga mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as follows. Yad karoshi, yad ashnashi, yad jahoshi, didasi, yad tapasyashi kaunteya, yad kurushva mad arpanam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering to me. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranitamena Tasmai Shugave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shiyutapatagalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadhuitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagavate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpataruvishcha Kripa Sindhibhya Vichapatitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Nityanamaya Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamaya Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatare Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jnanananda Mayam Devam Nilashva Nirmalashpatikakridam Adaram Sarva Vidyanam Hare Grivam Upasmehe Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so continuing our discussion on how Brahma is speaking here to Narada. And in this verse here, Prabhupada starts to clearly point out how this verse defines the material civilization, how people are engaged, how this false ego is bringing about these different transformations in which people are completely bewildered by their self-centered false ego. So Prabhupada starts this off by saying, materialistic ego, or the sense of identification with matter, is grossly self-centered, devoid of clear knowledge of the existence of God. So this false ego is the cause of our bewilderment. It's this identification with matter. There's the sense of identification with matter, that I am this body, I am a part of this family, I'm a part of this world, I'm a human being, I'm a man, I'm a woman. All these identifications are a cause of bewilderment for the living entity. It's grossly self-centered, devoid of clear knowledge of the existence of God. And this self-centered egoism of the materialistic living entities is the cause of their being conditioned by the other paraphernalia and continuing their bondage of material existence. So, along with this self-centered egoism comes along, those paraphernalias, which is house, home, children, name, fame, adoration. So everybody is bewildered by those things. So the false ego is their identification with this body, and along with the identification of that body comes so many other extensions, which bind us more and more. Naturally, when you have a mature body, you want, you grow, and you naturally want to be, that lust and greed is awakened within the heart, is there within the heart. And so one wants to satisfy that lust and greed. And in order to do that, one has to expand himself. One has to buy a nice car. One has to have nice children. One has to try to make himself look as though he's happy in material society. So he has to gather so many things, unnecessary things, external things, in order to pose himself as a great person. Maybe a great learned person, maybe a greatly materialistic wealthy person, maybe looked as a very renounced person or a strong person, very wealthy person. So all these qualities people want to show to the world, look how great I am. And so when one wants to do that, basically, his Prabhupada said he's devoid of clear knowledge of the existence of God. He himself takes that position of God. Because this is what this is, this identification with the false ego, this identification with matter, which that's this false ego. It is this God complexion. It is this complexion that I am the enjoyer. that I am the Purusha, I am the enjoyer of everything. So the living entity, he becomes conditioned by that, and by other paraphernalia, and by the conditioned by the other paraphernalia, and continuing their bondage of material existence is the cause of it. So the living entity, he's completely bewildered by this external energy. He's completely bewildered by this external energy, which is a divine energy. Krishna says that it is coming from me. This is a divine energy of mine. But it is for the purpose of bewildering the conditioned soul. It is for that purpose, in order for that conditioned soul that independence is there, to allow the conditioned soul to choose between Maya and Krishna, to choose between this illusion or reality. So this purport, it's touching on that point, that this self-centered materialistic ego, thus being transformed into three features, becomes known as mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance in three divisions, namely powers that evolve matter, knowledge of material creations, and the intelligence that guides such material activities. So Prabhupada here puts those three modes of material nature into those three categories: the power of evolving matter, which is Dravya Shakti, Kriya Shakti, initiation that creates, and Jnana Shakti, intelligence that guides. So these are the three classes. You've got the Jnana, you more or less this sort of karma, initiation that creates, and then you've got powers that evolve matter. So these three categories are described, and Prabhupada starts to categorize the class of the Jnana Shaktis, those who are situated on that mode of goodness. So Prabhupada starts this goes on with, in the Bhagavad Gita, this self-centered egoism is very nicely explained in the 7th chapter, verse 24 through to 27. So I'm going to quickly read through some of those verses. Unintelligent men, can you click on that thing? And then, yeah, if you click on that. 724 to 27. You couldn't just click on that thing? 24, yeah. So unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before, and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know me, know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. What's interesting is, if you ever pick up another Bhagavad Gita, first verse, if you want to know whether it's bona fide or not, is go to 724. If you go to 724, it will make it very clear that this is bogus and it's written by a Mayavadi. Because every other Bhagavad Gita that I've picked up and looked at says they change it. So if you go into go up, word for word, Vyaktam vyaktim apannam manyate mam abhuddhayah param bhavam ajananto mamavyayam anuttamam. But how the Mayavadis will translate that, now go back down. Krishna says here that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, was impersonal before. But the Mayavadis will translate that like this. They say, was personal before and have now assumed this. They'll say something like along the lines that I'm actually impersonal, but those who are unintelligent, they say that I am actually personal. So they take that, they see Krishna as, this is just this Krishna's body is actually material. But Krishna later says in the Bhagavad Gita that those who think like that are fools, number one. They're unintelligent, they're the fools, they're completely, what is the word he uses? Is it lowest of mankind? What is it? Naradhama. What is the verse this comes? I'm forgetting. Mahmudha Chum Ashutam Avaj. Yeah, fools deride my form when I come into this. Yeah. So fools, they're absolute fools because they see Krishna as that he is completely impersonal. Krishna is saying that those who are fools, they think I was impersonal before. But the Mayavadis, they translate it like that. They say, Krishna was impersonal before, now he's taken a personality. So they're the supreme, they say originally was impersonal and now has taken a personality. But that's absolute nonsense because Krishna clears that up in the 9th chapter, in the 12th chapter, in the 18th chapter. I mean, throughout the whole Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is like, it's very personal. It's making it clear that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is personal. I am the Supreme Person. I am above all these material conditions. I am actually my original form. I am personal. Because if you actually take this verse and let's say they, use the Sanskrit, and I was actually asking Vishnu Chitta Prabhu this, and it says Shankaracharya, he uses some obscure grammar technique to bring that meaning out of this verse. Because if you take that meaning and you run with the Bhagavad Gita, later in the Bhagavad Gita, it makes no sense at all. The Bhagavad Gita just stops making sense. And how can that happen when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is talking? He is above all this material creation. He is perfect. How can you have contradictory philosophy when Krishna is speaking? Because later in the 12th chapter, Krishna says to Arjuna that this path of impersonalism is very troublesome. And if you look at that verse, I think it's 12.2 or 3, in the Bhagavad Gita of the Mayavadis, they'll say the same thing. Because they can't change that. They can't work around that grammar to bring out an impersonal meaning from that. So because Krishna says, one who takes this impersonal path, it is very troublesome. If Krishna is saying that, that means maybe I shouldn't take it, right? Maybe I should take the path of bhakti. Krishna that he's actually encouraging that, worship me, be devoted unto me. Krishna is saying, take this path, is much easier. Well, the Mayavadis say, well, the bhakti is very easy. See, this is more difficult, so he's saying like that. Krishna is saying, but the difficulty gives you more result. They'll say something along those lines. But Krishna makes it very clear throughout the whole Bhagavad Gita that yogi nam api sarvesham madgatenar antar atmanah shaddavan bhajate yomam what is the last? Samaya yukta tamo matah. This is my opinion that someone who is absorbed in me, devoted to me, he is the topmost yogi. Not the jnana yogi, but the bhakti yogi. He is the topmost of all yogis. So these rascal men who have not studied the Vedic literatures as it is, they come to this conclusion that Krishna is impersonal. They're simply covered up by illusion. They haven't gone anywhere. They're actually going the other way. One who thinks Krishna takes a material body, one who thinks that Krishna was impersonal before, he's completely unintelligent, unqualified to come to the platform of devotional service. So Krishna goes on here. Just lost that. So it says, I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. So Prabhupada was making that point throughout that purport in the verse that we're going through today, that this internal energy of Krishna, that actually they're covered by that. Therefore, they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. So here, next verse. Oh Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I know all living entities, but me no one knows. That was 26. One more, 27. And O scion of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. So going back to the original verse that we're going through. So the self-centered impersonalists, without a clear conception of personality of Godhead, conclude in this way that the personality of Godhead takes a material shape from his original impersonal spiritual existence for a particular mission. And this misleading conception of the Supreme Lord by the self-centered impersonalist continues even though he is seen to be very interested in Vedic literatures such as Brahma Sutras and other highly intellectual sources of knowledge. So even if one is absorbed in studying scripture, forget it. You cannot come to this understanding of pure devotion. Because they're jnanis, they're on the platform of mental speculation. Actually, all this Prabhupada says in the third canto, maybe you can bring this up, Nelly. Who's got it? You got it? 3, 529. Prabhupada is a similar verse in the 3rd canto. And Prabhupada goes into some details here that I wanted to go through. So, okay. So, can you go, have you got it up? Go to the purport. And so you can go to the part where it starts with, the material creation is meant for rebellious souls who are not prepared to act subordination under the Supreme Lord. Okay, you got it? Okay. So the spirit of false lordship is called false ego. It is manifested in 3 modes of material nature, and it exists in mental speculation only. Those who are in the mode of goodness that think that each and every person is God, and thus they laugh at the pure devotees who try to engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So that's how Prabhupada starts off that section where he starts to talk about false ego. So on the platform of mode of goodness, one starts to think he is God. So the Vedas, they're meant to bring us up, right? They bring us up. The whole point of the Vedas is they're meant to bring us up from the 3 modes of material nature. They take us through those processes. There you perform all these samskaras and have all these yagyas and all these different rituals in order to purify yourself. But you can see that even though the Vedas, they take us on this platform, we're still stuck. We're still stuck within the 3 modes of material nature. Actually, the Vedas, to a great extent, we won't be able to pass the 3 modes of material natures just by study of Veda, by jnana. This is not the way to actually liberation to Krishna consciousness. Because actually Krishna is beyond that. And this question comes in the Bhagavatam when Shukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj asks us, how can material sound vibration, like the Vedas, give liberation? How is that possible? So this Veda is also influenced by 3 modes of material nature. It's under the 3 modes of material. Vishnu Chitta Prabhu is called Traigunya Vishaya Veda. This verse, do you know this? Arjuna? Okay, maybe somebody can try to pull it up. But maybe I heard it wrong, but these Vedas, they won't be able to take us to the platform of understanding Krishna completely, even if one studies for millions of years. 245. Let me see. It's all right, I'll bring it up, Nali. You can stay there. Okay. So, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nishtrai Gunya Bhavarjuna, Nirdhando Nitya Satvasto, Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. The Vedas mainly deal with the subject matters of the 3 modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to these 3 modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain in safety and be established in the self. So it's a small purport. So all material activities involve actions and reactions in the 3 modes of material nature. They are meant for fruitive results which cause bondage in material world. The Vedas deal mostly with the fruitive activities to gradually elevate the general public from the field of sense gratification to a position on the transcendental plane. Arjuna, as a student and a friend of Lord Krishna, is advised to raise himself to the transcendental position of Vedanta philosophy, where in the beginning there is Brahma Jigyasa, or questions on the supreme transcendence. All the living entities who are in the material world are struggling very hard for existence. For them, the Lord, after creation of material world, gave the Vedic wisdom, advising how to live and get rid of material entanglement. When the activities for sense gratification, namely the Karma Kanda chapter, are finished, then the chance for spiritual realization is offered in the form of Upanishads, which are part of different Vedas. As the Bhagavad Gita is a part of the 5th Veda, namely the Mahabharata, the Upanishad mark the beginning of transcendental life. As long as material body exists, there are actions and reactions in material modes. One has to learn tolerance in the face of dualities such as happiness and distress or cold and warmth, and by tolerating such dualities become free from anxiety regarding gain and loss. This transcendental position is achieved in full Krishna consciousness when one is fully dependent on the goodwill of Krishna. So just by the study of the Vedas, we're still stuck in the three modes of material nature. As we can see, as those who rise to the platform of goodness, this is this last snare of Maya, is that one starts to think that he is God. So the jnanis, or those who meditate upon the Paramatma in the heart, that is the last, that they're very, they're elevated in their practice, but when they come to the realization of Paramatma, they think that they are Paramatma. But this is foolishness, because Krishna is making it very clear that he himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, knows past, present, and future, knows the activities of the living entities in complete full. Whereas us, we're completely limited in our understanding. So, here we go. That the ignorance of the personal feature of the laws is simply due to ignorance of the mix of different modes. The impersonalist thus cannot conceive of Lord's eternal spiritual form of eternal knowledge, bliss, and existence. That although they come up to the platform of so-called goodness, they're still completely, that goodness is more or less covered by ignorance. That they're not able to recognize the Lord in his personal feature. As long as one cannot recognize the Lord in his personal feature, one is understood to be complete ignorance. It hasn't come anywhere. He hasn't made any progress. So the reason is that the Lord reserves the right of not exposing himself to the non-devotee, who even after a thorough study of literatures like the Bhagavad Gita remains an impersonalist simply by obstinacy. What is this word obstinacy called? Mean? Hard-headed. Okay. Because you can see, before Srila Prabhupada came to the West, there were so many Bhagavad Gitas going around. Prabhupada says in the Bhagavad Gita, there's over how many copies? 500? 600. Now there must be so many. Just like somebody sent a picture of in Barnes and Nobles, all these Bibles. It was like 100 different Bibles. And Vishnu Chitta Prabhu was saying, you go to buy the Bhagavad Gita and it's the same in India. There's like over 500 copies and translations. Now there's so many more. So, and all of those could never bring one to a platform of surrendering to Krishna. Giving up, illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and actually chanting every day, giving up our vices, giving up our understanding of our Western culture and culture that we're brought up in, and accepting Vedic culture. None of these things could do that, because the substance is not there. Because impersonal realization does not have substance to it. There's no substance there. Actually, Rupa Goswami says the happiness felt by that is like the size of, it's like the level of happiness experienced in impersonal realization is the size of a calf's hoof print, very small. Whereas that experience of devotional service is like an ocean. Nectar of devotion is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Rasamrita is rasa. It has this transcendental mellows. Amrita, which is Amrita is very sweet. How do you even define it? It's very tasteful. And Sindhu is the ocean. So Rupa Goswami gave us this Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but the impersonalists, it's not tasteful at all. It's just existence in itself. There's no real bliss involved, because it's just the negation of material existence. So nobody could surrender to Krishna in that way, this impersonalist understanding. So the reason is the Lord reserves the right of not exposing himself to the non-devotee, who even after a thorough study of literatures like the Bhagavad Gita. So that comes in the Brahma Samhita. What is this? That, even after the traveling with the mind for so long, that Pantashtu Koti Samavat Sampragamyo Muni Sampungamanam. Yes. So even after the yogis who on the platform of the mind, they can travel so fast, they'll never be able to reach the Lord. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur quotes, he comments in that purport that they won't even get to anywhere near even the lotus feet of the Lord. Okay, the light emanating from the toenail of the Lord, they won't even reach that. So there's no question of this, because this material energy is it's so difficult to overcome. It is his energy, and it is there for that purpose, for the living entities to not be able to overcome it unless they surrender to Krishna. That is the qualification for overcoming this material energy. It's surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When one surrenders to Krishna, then the material energy, she no longer tortures one in this material world. So this obstinacy is due to the action of Yogamaya, a personal energy of the Lord that acts like an aide-de-camp by covering the vision of the obstinate impersonalist. Has anybody heard this term before? Is a protector. Advisor. It's interesting that Prabhupada says that it is an action of Yogamaya, not Mahamaya. So that this energy of the Lord, personal energy, she's there to that nobody just attaining Krishna or understanding Krishna is a very difficult thing. It is not some cheap thing. So for those who are not devoted, for those who are not have proper understanding, it's not available to them. So such a bewildered human being is described as mudha, or grossly ignorant, because he is unable to understand the transcendental form of the Lord as being unborn and unchangeable. And so these rascals, these unintelligent mudhas, they, as Prabhupada was quoting in that purport before, saying that these men, they laugh at the devotees. They think they are God, and on that platform, they look at the devotees who are, very simple-hearted, perhaps. Let me see if I can bring this up again. Oh, okay. Who are very simple-hearted, who are simply performing activities for Krishna, chanting Hare Krishna, chanting and dancing, and, feasting, talking about Krishna's pastimes. They simply laugh at them. Those who are in mode of goodness think that each and every person is God, and thus they laugh at the pure devotees who try to engage in transcendental loving service of the Lord. Those who are puffed up by the mode. So Prabhupada makes that point, that there's such rascals, they think that this pure devotional service, or trying to practice pure devotional service, is something to just, like, you guys are doing the lower thing. You think you're on the higher platform, but you're on the lower thing. They simply absorbed their happiness comes from absorption in false ego. That, look, we're doing something better. Whereas the happiness of the devotees, they're very blissful because they're absorbed in serving Krishna. That, look, Krishna is very amazing. But these Mayavadis, they just like we see in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, they're very much like, why are you chanting and dancing? You're a sannyasi, sit and study Vedanta. They'll criticize us. I mean, this Mayavadi was here, and he, because, devotees is generally a little bit avadut, and, he wanted us to sit like this, right? When you hear Bhagavatam, everyone should sit like this. The whole class. Very much. And you should not joke and laugh. But if you look at the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, you look at the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, they're crazy. They just they cry and laugh and jump and dance and just completely, they would just steal, and it's described, they would steal the storehouse love of God and then distribute it. In that way, they would just be in complete ecstasy. The Mayavadis cannot understand this. They cannot understand this. That's just bhakti. They're just sentimental. That's how they look at it. Lord Chaitanya says, you're just sentimental. What is this? Yeah, rolling on the ground. What is all this? Crying in ecstasy, laughing in ecstasy. What is all this? This is not Vedanta. You're meant to sit down and be sober. What is this prasadam? You're a sannyasi. How can you eat like this? You're all brahmacharis. How can you eat like this? You can't eat like this. You can't eat salt. You can't eat so many different varieties. You can't have sweets. My God. That's the only enjoyment for a brahmachari, sweets and naps. So you can't have this. Mayavadis, nobody should read it, but there's a book that's written by, Guru Maharaj references it in his Brahmacharya book, Shivananda, he was like a very strict practitioner. That we can, at least, I guess, in some respect, we can respect that he was a strict practitioner of what he followed. Nowadays, Mayavadis, so-called Mayavadis, they can't even follow the basics. So a Mayavadi, he writes in there actually that you should not take salt. You should take the same food every day. You're not allowed to engage in laughing and doing all these things. You just sit, and what do? What is your sadhana? It's more or less, they do japa, they do some sort of japa, they chant some mantra. They may even chant Hare Krishna because it is the Kali Yuga Dharma. But they're very staunch. They sit there, and you have to sit in a particular posture, and can't talk the whole time, can't joke, can't laugh, can't do anything. It's very like no substance, it's dead. It doesn't have personality. Whereas you come and you see the devotees of the Lord is very attractive. They're all very unique and have their different qualities, and some are here and there like that. But you can appreciate that. That especially those devotees who have taken up that desire to surrender to the Lord more and more. Yes, we joke, and yes, we laugh, and yes, we're not cultured. None of us, if any of us were in India right now, they'll be like, what the heck is this? Who are these people? What the heck? They're meant to be like Brahminical. They're meant to be Brahminical. They're meant to be, Vaishnavas. Like, what is this? That's what they'll say. Because I have personal experience of Indian devotees who are from that culture, and it's true, the cultural aspect is there. They'll just be like, what is this? This is not proper. But the mood is that there's a principal mood of surrender, though. There's a principal mood of all those little problems are there, and we will never be able to come to the platform of perfectly being cultured. Like when you grow up in India in the Brahminical culture, forget it. It's like impossible for us practically. We should try our best, not that we'd be like, okay, no, bro, now I can do whatever I like. Muchi suchi is just all the same thing. Not that, but we try our best. But it's just we're brought up meleches, unfortunately. So that's going to be there. But what overcomes that is that purity of purpose, that desire to surrender unto the Lord in spite of all these things. So Krishna becomes pleased with that you have all these things, and yes, we're brought up in this Melecha culture. We're not qualified to study Veda, to study Vedanta, to study the Upanishads, to study all these things. Absolutely no qualification. But the only qualification is that there is devotion, there is mercy, there is sincerity. That is the only qualification, because there was Lord Chaitanya who approached this Brahmin in South India who couldn't read. Jagai and Madai, they're the greatest sinners. At that time, they're performing finding what not to do and doing it. So although we don't have, you particularly say the culture and this and this and this and this is not exactly perfect, and the Mayavadis will laugh at us, like this Mayavadi that came. He was fried out with us. He was like, "Why do you guys?" Because I was taking him to this place where he's staying. He's like, "Why do you guys joke so much?" He's like, you have to stop joking. You have to be more serious." I was like, "All right." and then he came back, and then it was a Sunday feast. And anyways, how we are. And he was fried out again that we were joking and laughing too much. You guys went a little bit overboard with that one, but. So the devotees of Lord Chaitanya, the devotees that are coming in this Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition are very unique. That their principal mood is of surrender. And so people will laugh at us for that. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, what does he say? He says, let me see here, sorry. Verses. So he says, let the, how do I say this? Gregarious? Huh? Garrulous? Is this how you say that? Oh my God, all right. I think it's Garrulous. Garrulous. Let the garrulous populace say whatever they like. We shall pay no regard thoroughly maddened by the ecstasy of intoxicating beverages of love for Krishna, we shall enjoy life running about, rolling on the ground and dancing in ecstasy. So that's what we do. Like we go out on book distribution. If somebody from the Mayavadi classes saw us what we do on book distribution, they'll be shocked. But that's what we do. We run around, scream, dance, and basically rolling in ecstasy. Say some crazy things to crazy people. And so we don't care for what they say because we understand we're feeling the bliss of Krishna consciousness. We're making advancement. We're seeing that in our natural detachment from our material life and gradual detachment, hopefully, from sex desire. So they cannot understand that. They cannot understand that. For them, everything is very stern and strict. And who wants to do that? It's just it's not very relishable. And because of that, their heart becomes hardened. And their whole basis of understanding is Krishna is impersonal. That's how they start their study. That's how they start study. That ultimate platform is Brahman. That's the ultimate platform. On that basis, we'll understand everything. Not on the basis of inquiry. Not on the basis of Atato Brahma Jigyasa, actually, which is the beginning of Vedanta. Not on that basis, but on a basis of misunderstanding. That's how you begin your Atato Brahma Jigyasa. You begin your inquiry by saying, actually, I already know. I already assume that Krishna is impersonal. That actually I already assume that Brahman is everything. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mityam. That this is the absolute. You bring in on that platform, of course you're going to get bewildered. Because it's mental speculation. So the conditioned soul may take form birth after birth due to his conditioned existence in matter, but the self-centered impersonalists, by their gross ignorance, accept the Lord as one of them because of self-centered egoism, even after so-called advancement of knowledge in the Vedanta. The Lord, being situated in the heart of every individual living entity, knows very well the tendencies of such conditioned souls in terms of past, present, and future. But the bewildered conditioned soul hardly can know him in his eternal form. What is that verse? Krishna says, for those who are envious, I cast them into the ocean of material existence, or I cast them into hell. What is that verse that comes? Maybe it says, well, that's a little different. I think that's a little later. This verse is a little later, cast. He uses the word, Prabhupada uses the word cast in the purport. I'm not going to find it. Envious. Maybe somebody can look for it. Okay. The divine and the demoniac, is that? What was it? 16 what? Okay. Yep. Tanaham dishata Quran Sangshareshu naradhaman kshipamyi ajashram ashubhan ashuswa eva yonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. So this is the destination of the so-called Vedantists. I perpetually cast them into the ocean of material existence. Samsara, that's it for them. It's going to take a lot for them to come to the realization of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and their original position, actually. So it's Prabhupada says here, can hardly know him in eternal form by the will of the Lord. Therefore, the impersonalists, even after knowing the Brahman and Paramatma features of the Lord, remain ignorant of his eternal personal feature as ever existing Narayana, transcendental to all material creations. So they're not eternally, but I perpetually cast them until they come to the platform of devotional service. So the cause of gross ignorance is constant engagement by materialistic man in the matter of artificially increasing material demands. To realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to purify the material senses by devotional service. The mode of goodness of the Brahminical culture recommended in the Vedic literatures is helpful to such spiritual realization. And thus the Jnana Shakti stage of conditioned soul is comparatively better than the other two stages, namely Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti. The whole material civilization is manifested by a huge accumulation of materials, or in other words, raw materials for industrial purposes, and the industrial enterprises, Kriya Shakti, and are all due to ignorance of spiritual life. In order to rectify this great anomaly of material civilization based on the principles of Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti, one has to adopt the process of devotional service of the Lord by adoption of the principles of Karma Yoga mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. So, this Brahminical culture should be taken up. So one should engage in that Brahminical culture by understanding, and by doing that, Prabhupada says that it'll help us come up. It is helpful. It is not that it is, the all be all and end all, but it is very helpful. It's this samodama tapasocham shantir arjavam evacha jnanam vijnanam ashtikyam. What is it? It is brahma karma svabhavaja. So that peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness, these are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. So we should try to come up to that platform, this cleanliness, this self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance. All these things we have to, all these things will naturally be developed in the endeavor for pure devotional service. But we should make an endeavor to be clean. Make an endeavor to understand austerity and how that is very important in our spiritual life. Be honest. Study the Shastra. Contemplate the Shastra. Realize the Shastra. Practice it. By doing this, you become peaceful. Getting self-control. So, performing devotional service on this platform of Brahminical culture, it is very helpful. One starts to realize Krishna consciousness very much faster because he comes out of ignorance. This Brahminical culture, training in Brahminical culture, takes one out of ignorance. So, which this Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti, this passion and ignorance, these two things that are being described here, mostly those are associated with those two Shaktis here. So, that's going on in civilization, that building of so many structures and exploitation of so many factories and such and such. Prabhupada describes that here in this purport that same purport that I had pulled up before. Just 1 second. So Prabhupada says here that it is, those who are puffed up by the mode of passion, they try to lord it over mature nature in various ways. Some of them engage in altruistic activities as if they were agents appointed to do good to others by their mental speculative plans. Such men accept the standard ways of mundane altruism, but their plans are made on the basis of false ego. The false ego extends to the limit of becoming one with the Lord. The last class of egoistic conditioned souls, those in the mode of ignorance, are misguided by the identification of gross body with the self. Thus, all their activities are centered around body only. All these persons are given the chance to play with false egoistic ideas, but at the same time, the Lord is kind enough to give them a chance to take help from scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam so that they may understand the signs of Krishna and thus make their life successful. The entire material creations, therefore, is meant for the falsely egoistic living entities hovering on the mental platform under different illusions in the modes of material nature. So, actually the translation of this verse came like this: Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transformation into false ego, which is manifested in three phases: cause, effect, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental platform and are based on the material elements, gross senses, and mental speculation. The false ego is represented in the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So this is all mental speculation. It's all on the mental platform. It's not actually reality. Reality means studying Srimad Bhagavatam, studying Bhagavad Gita, and coming to the platform of pure devotional service. So that's why Prabhupada ends up quoting this verse, that whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever activities you perform, you do it as an offering unto me. So this is the platform of devotional service. Is one platform. The highest platform is Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papibhyo Moksha Shami Masacha. That one just doesn't engage what he's doing in Krishna service. He forgets all that nonsense and just engages in Krishna service fully. But for the Dravya Shaktis and the Kriya Shakti, those who are engaged in this activity, Krishna advises like this, that whatever you're doing, okay, you offer your result unto me. Okay, you're engaged in some factory work, all right, you get money, okay, give a donation to the temple. Buy books, buy Krishna flowers, buy Krishna Bhoga. Use whatever abilities you have in Krishna's service. So Krishna's advising like that. It's practical. It's not, because not everyone is on that platform of full surrender. So we can adopt these principles, as Prabhupada says, adopt the principles of karma yoga mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. If we adopt these people who are engaged in this different forms of work, this Dravya Shakti and Kriya Shakti, they can also take up devotional service. It is not limited to just brahmacharis and brahmacharinis and sannyasis. It is available for everyone. That's why Prabhupada wanted the leaders of society to be devotees, so that everyone who is engaged in whatever work all can be engaged in, that they will be ultimately engaged in devotional service. So Krishna, Prabhupada says here that Krishna gives these scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam so they can understand the signs of Krishna and thus make their lives successful. So the people on the platform of goodness who think they're God, passion, who are trying to enjoy, and the ignorance who are just completely identifying with matter and suffering like anything, they can take help from this Bhagavad Gita and this Srimad Bhagavatam. And when they take help from this, they can become completely liberated. Therefore, the distribution of books, the distribution of the holy name, the distribution of prasadam. But as my spiritual master says, the center is the books. The center is the books. Without the books, he says, what is the prasadam distribution and having this center and this program and that program? It's not so useful. It's there, okay, it's good, but without the distribution of Prabhupada's books, without reading Prabhupada's books, without understanding them, without propagating the platform of pure devotional service, everything will just go to hell. As we've seen, everything will just end up, it will just die out, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Over time, this parampara, it was broken. But if we keep that line of pure devotion, the principle of pure devotion, flowing by being truthful, by following those Brahminical qualities, by trying to cultivate those Brahminical qualities, we can remain like Brahminical, very Brahminical in being chaste to the spiritual master, chaste to Srila Prabhupada, then we'll never have trouble. We'll never have trouble. The line will stay pure. The book distribution will go on. It'll expand to such a limit that every single person on the street will have a book. Every single person should understand that the ultimate form of meditation or ultimate goal of life is to chant the pure name of the Lord, to engage in the service of the Lord. And in this way, the whole world should become transformed. And our work, we have unlimited work to do. Don't think that today I have nothing to do. There's unlimited work to do in Krishna consciousness. If you put your mind to it, you put your intelligence to it, come to the platform of, as Krishna is saying to Arjuna, transcend these three modes of material nature and come to this platform of devotional service, then we'll see actually there's so much to engage in, so much to engage our minds, to engage these young bodies that we have. So we can engage in the fire of book distribution and burn this material body alive and attain a spiritual body by which we can serve Krishna with more energy, without having to sleep, without having to do so many things, other things. Actually, if you go to New Talavan, Vivuji Prabhu will happily tell you, even in the spiritual world, you have to pass through. You pass through. He said he read it in the Bhagavatam. So even that I don't know, I get it. He said, I asked him a few questions about that. He's like, well, just find out when you get there. How does that work? So one should desire to burn his body in the fire of Sankirtan and burn that body completely. Just forget it. We've had so many other material bodies and absolutely uselessly wasted it away, every single life, just wasted it away. Now we're in this unfortunate position. Prabhupada said, make the best of a bad bargain. So burn this body in the fire of Sankirtan. Most of us here are young. Prabhu is on his way back home, back to Godhead. He's done it. He's burned his body in the fire of Sankirtan. Now this is the final run, and we're just beginning. We can take inspiration from devotees as such. We're very lucky to have such devotees who have dedicated their lives, who have given everything to Krishna. And so we can take that example and see that it is possible, because sometimes it is really tough. Most of us all in our 20s. I think everybody in this room right now is in their 20s. Oh, apart from, sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's just, oh, you're 18, sorry. That's better. It's difficult to see that, 50 years down the line that I'll still be following the four regular principles, chanting 16 rounds every day. It's like, oh my God, so many years. But I'm sure it went by so quickly, huh? All those blissful kirtans and the amazing book distribution. Also the hard times were there. But looking back, it's like, you're telling me that it's like, it's like a very happy life. So we can take it from personal experience. Dvibuja Prabhu, yesterday we were watching the video. He very ecstatically describes how it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to engage in material life. This makes no sense if you actually think with some intelligence. So I'll end my class there. Actually, I want to open it up for a few questions. I'll end my class there. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Sorry, Avadut Chandra Prabhu.
It's interesting thinking about this aspect of one who's in the mode of goodness, they think themselves to be God. It's interesting how that's a symptom. And like, where does that come from? I mean, because if you're situated in the mode of goodness, it seems like you'd have some sort of intelligence. But it's such a insane idea.
Yeah,
you're
it's insanity.
You're above in modes of ignorance and passion, but where does that idea come from?
Well, Krishna says in the mode of goodness, you're conditioned by knowledge and happiness. So it seems, if my philosophical speculation is that when they're happy in that state, I'm sure they start to think, well, look, I'm the doer of everything. And if they try to study Vedanta in this way, they'll just go, look, I'm happy, I'm satisfied, as long as that must mean I'm somehow, some ridiculous way, they must come to the platform of being God. Actually, another thing is, on the platform of goodness, you can study. You're meant to study Vedanta on platform of goodness. So they may come to the platform of goodness, and then they study Vedanta, and they come to this obscure, horrible, conclusion that I am God. So mode of goodness is condition. It's a conditioning. It's not a platform that we particularly desire as an ultimate platform. It's good for devotees. It's great for us. I mean, it's great for anyone. But actually, it's only great in the platform on devotional service, because it allows us to study Vedic literatures and Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. But for the materialists and the jnanis, they're at a platform of goodness, but then they study Vedanta in this impersonal aspect. So then all is lost. So it seems that because goodness allows study, and you study this wrong Vedanta, this wrong understanding of Vedanta, and then you're finished. So the snares of illusion, the snare of Maya is like so many layers, just like impossible to overcome. Yes, Matsya Prabhu.
Yeah, so I'm just having a difficult time understanding this verse. So it says the false ego transformed into three features becomes known as the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And then in three divisions, the powers that evolve, matter, knowledge of material creations, and intelligence that guides. This Dravya, Kriya, and Jnana Shakti, are these correlated with the three modes of material nature, or is this like a different thing? Because I'm having a difficult time understanding if they correlate with one of the modes of material nature.
Yeah, it seems that. Because
which one is correlating with which?
So you see, intelligence, that's Prabhupada seems to, because if you go to that purport, if you go to 3 point, this paragraph explains it also. That spirit, there's those who are engaged in work, and then the industries. So he says that, so helpful in realization is Jnana Shakti, so that's your, that's there up here, Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti. So then that's your intelligence aspect. And then you've got Dravya Shakti, which is, Prabhupada defines that as, it's like here, Dravya Shakti is knowledge of material creation, and then power of evolving matter, I believe, is the Kriya Shakti, which is initiation. Dravya Shakti is power that evolve matter, and Kriya Shakti. So Kriya Shakti, knowledge of material creations, I believe that's on the platform of passion, and then powers that evolve matter is ignorance. So you identify with matter. So in this purport of 5.29, Prabhupada puts those into those standards. He says, like I was stating, that those who is on the platform of passion, Prabhupada says here that they try to lord it over mature nature in various ways. And then those on the platform of false ego, on the platform of ignorance, they identify with the gross body, with the self. So powers that evolve matter, initiation that create, and then intelligence that guide. So because matter is complete ignorance, initiation, that's more on the it seems like, when you do, generally, when you desire and, what is that Krishna says, in the platform of passion is symptomized by, what does it say, this hankering? No, what is this, how does Krishna say this? The symptoms of passion. Yeah, so longing desire. So that's there. And then Jnana Shakti is intelligence, one can study. So Prabhupada also goes along those lines in this other purport that's very similar. So yeah, it's a little bit like, I have to maybe discuss this with Mahotsa Prabhu also and Vishnu Chitta Prabhu. Anything else? Okay, Mataji's, is there anything? Okay, we'll take one question and then.
I was just curious about like what the qualification is as far as like Krishna revealing himself in his personal form, because I meet a lot of people, including myself, who like they'll be like seeking or searching for God for a long time, but at least for me, like God didn't reveal himself as personal until like years later that journey started. So what brings us to that point?
Krishna tells Arjuna that, he says that because you're not envious of me, you're my friend. And so that's the qualification. One is not envious of Krishna. One is not envious of the principle that, Krishna is God and I'm a servant of Krishna. So if one is not envious like that, then he can come to the platform of devotion. So he can understand Krishna. So that's what Krishna says this here in the 4th chapter, which is it 4th chapter? 9:1 also. Okay. Okay. I'll go to 9:1. 9:1. Yeah, so he says here that, Sadhu Shri Bhagavan Uja idam te guhyam tamam pravakshami anusuyave jnana vijnana sahitam jnana yajgnatva mokshase subhat. That, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of all the miseries of material existence. So just that. Just not being envious. Willing to accept that there's God, and that I'm much lower. I can't become God. Most people have this complexion that eventually I'll become God. Even when they read, they're like, oh, this is talking about being a servant. I don't want to read that. I've had that in book distribution. It's like, it's like when you tell them, yeah, we're actually servants of God, but they're like, no, I am God. It's like, all right. So that's the qualification. Okay, all right. That's my time.